G'day folks, Heath Home here, back with another Ableton Live tutorial. Today's video is going to be part one of a series of shorter videos where I'm going to show you some creative ways to use Ableton Live to spark your creativity, to find some inspiration or generate some music ideas for the track that you're going to start or something you're already working on. What you're going to need to follow along with the videos is a working version of Ableton Live and a sample pack. So let's dive in. I'm going to come over to my Ableton browser here, and I have down in Places a folder called Sample Library, and if I head inside of that folder I have a bunch of sample packs, and I'm going to use this sample pack as the example today, this flash mob raw technique. So I'm going to open that sample pack up. I'm going to choose the WAV loop folder. I'm going to open that folder up. I'm going to choose the bass loop folder, open that up, and then I'm going to choose one of these subfolders. And let's have a listen to some of the basses inside of here. Nice, so there's some cool sounding bass loops inside of this sample pack. Obviously, as this is a tutorial about showing you a way to be creative using Ableton Live, I'm not just going to grab that generic audio loop and drop it over into the project window and say job done. What I want to show you is a technique where we can essentially use any audio loop we fancy and modify it in a way that works for our own style of music, our own taste, and essentially actually create a template that we can then use on any audio loop, and happy days, we can have a lot of fun doing that. So let's grab this bass loop here and drag it up and into an empty audio track. Let's double click to open up that audio clip, and now we can see all the clip properties down here. And let's come down into the bottom right corner and click this little grey button, the furthest one to the right, to turn that on. And that turns on this little tab here that's called envelopes. And what we're looking for inside of this tab is that the first two boxes, the top box says clip and the second box says transposition. If, for example, it's showing the mixer and track volume, which I think is the default setting, all you need to do is click in the box, choose the clip, and then choose from the next menu which selection you want to make. In this case, it's transposition. So just to talk a little bit about transposition for a moment, every time we open audio track or clip like this, we have this transpose knob over here. And at the bottom of the knob, it's showing 0 ST. Now, the savvy amongst us will probably know, who know a little bit about music theory, will probably connect the ST with semitones. What is a semitone? A semitone is when we're looking at a piano keyboard, it's one key to the next key, or one note to the next note. That is the interval or movement of a semitone. So already here in our audio clip we have a transposition knob that would allow me to pitch the whole bass loop up or down in different musical values. So I could apply music theory interval numbers if I know one. So for example, if I come to this and transpose it -12 semitones, that turns out that that's an octave. 12 semitones is the movement of an octave. So I can implement changes here of specific music values, semitones, or you could randomly dial in something here as you wish, a random number, but obviously you're then going to need to trust your ears and check and see if it works with other material in your project, etc. So there's different ways to use this. Just to give you an example, at -12, let's have a listen to the bass. Sounds good, it's a nice deep bass. If we put it back to 0 semitones, that's the original pitch of the bass line. If we pitch it up to 3 semitones, so we can pitch it up higher. So transposition, great, allows us to pitch things up and down and change its musical tuning. Why did we then open this envelope box over here that has clip and transposition inside of it? Because we then can now work on this clip in another exciting way, and that is that we can look at this bass line and start to adjust actually how it plays musically, and we can do it note by note. This global transpose is transposing the whole loop up and down, but if we have this turned on over here and this blue line, I can now come here and listen to the bass and say, okay, note number 4 in this bass line, I'm going to click in a point with the mouse on this blue line at 0 semitones, and I'm going to pull the line up with the mouse and I'm going to choose 3 semitones. I'm then going to click another point in and drop the line back down to 0. So this note now is going to play 3 semitones different to how it originally sounded in the loop. Nice. So I can now come here and I can tune the individual notes to different musical values. So I can come to this note over here, and I might pitch this one down to 3 semitones, and I'm going to come over to this one here and I'm going to pitch this one up 7 semitones. Now I am choosing to use musical values here that I know will work regardless of whatever the bass line is, whether it's major or minor or what the music scale is. I know these semitone values are going to work. As I said, if you choose random ones, you're going to have to trust your ears a lot more. I'm now just going to highlight this first bar by dragging the mouse through it like so, and then Command D on my keyboard and duplicate my automation of transposition over into the second bar. So now let's have a listen. Pretty cool. Let's just grab, for the sake of it, the original bass and drop it up here as well, so we're going to have a comparison and we can check between the two. Let's listen to the original bass, then back up to the new one. So it already sounds a bit more interesting. What else can we do? Well, when we hover around with the mouse on this automation line and the automation I've created, you'll notice the pale blue line changes to a mid blue, and that's really useful. For example, if I hover near the line, I can then just click the mouse down and drag it all nicely up and down in a uniform way, whereas if I was just doing it point by point, I'd be, you know, trying to drag this now up to 9 and then this one to come up to 9 as well. So as you can see, that's a much more efficient way of doing that, and it works all around the clip, on the sides, everywhere. So what I'm thinking to do now is, what I have here is a linear automation. It's blocks, it's very sharp linear shape. What I can also do here is start to click around and change some of these points. And I also must point out that currently any of these points that I add with the mouse, they're snapping to the grid. And if you want to change that in some way, you need to right click the mouse in this window here, and you can choose from here different synchronizate music sync values, so the grid would snap at quarter notes or snap at 1/8 or 1/16, and you can also choose whether it's wide or narrow, etc. I'm going to leave it as is, but you can change what values the notes snap to on the grid here, which is pretty handy. So I'm going to start removing some of these points to show you that I can also make it linear like this, so like a triangle. But what I want to show you now is if I hover under that line, I can actually hold down Alt Option on my keyboard and make concave and convex shapes. And this is going to mean that the note pitch bends. It already is bending up to this new pitch of 3 semitones, but it now bends with a nice curve and exits with a curve, which is going to make it sound quite different in a positive way. So I'm going to carry on doing a bit of editing here, just bear with me for a sec, and I'm going to modify my automation to sound nice and interesting with some curves in play. All right, getting there. And as I said, I'm just hovering over the lines to get the option to put those curves in, and then it's Alt Option on the keyboard underneath the line when it changes color to dial in that curve shape. All right, so let's have a listen to the loop now. Okay, and this last one here, I'm going to pitch, just drag this note up here to 12 semitones, so it would be an octave higher on that note. Nice, and now we could come back over to our global transpose and choose -12 semitones to pitch the whole loop overall back down an octave. Cool, or I might just go for 7 semitones, which is a nice interval to pitch it down a bit. And now we can try it against our original loop. Cool, so essentially what I've done here is actually I've created a template here. And now this is where this gets even more fun and exciting. Just before we go there, let's also look at the algorithms that we have here, the warp algorithms, because we can also make the clip sound differently with a few other things that we've got on offer over here. And one of those is going into the warping algorithms and saying, okay, it's by default, currently it's beats, but we could try on, particularly on the bass, tones, complex or complex pro. So let's have a listen. Let's change it to tones. Maybe let's try complex. Okay, that sounds interesting. Complex pro. That's really cool. I mean, that kind of makes it sound like a proper guitar kind of bass line. So some good options here. I'm going to leave it on beats because I'm actually going to keep it in beats because I'm going to take advantage of this second section, this preserve area. And what I'm going to do is sort of change a little bit the clip timing as it plays through the bass loop. And I'm going to do that by selecting this bottom box where the double arrows are and choosing the single arrow so that the loop plays through left to right. And then I'm going to adjust this value where it says 100, and also the box above it, the trans in this case is referring to transients, and that means that all these little grey transients that Ableton has put in, guessing where the spikes in this bass loop audio is, it's going to chop up the sort of rhythm and timing based on the transients if I leave this as transients. So let's have a listen. And that sounds nice to me. I like that kind of choppy, more rhythmic sounding bass that I'm getting by altering this. And for example, if I choose a synchronized music value, the 16th, let's have a listen to that. Nice. So depending on what style of music I'm writing, I've got some really fun options in here, and you can choose, move this value around. This is originally untouched, and then we can dial in some sort of groove essentially, and then we can also play around again with our global transpose over here as well. So that's pretty cool. There are other things we can do here, but this is going to be a good starting point for our template. And so what am I talking about with the idea of the template? Well, what I'm talking about is that now I've set this automation up over here and a little bit of action over here. A lot of people don't know this. I can now come into Ableton and sample packs and other folders, or the same folder, and just drag other loops over into this clip view and change the sample out, keeping the same automation, which could be really cool. So let's put a kick drum in. Let's come over to our bass loop, and now I'm just going to change it to other samples in this folder here. That one works really good for me personally. And again, I can now come over here and modify things on the other side of things. So before I go down a huge rabbit hole, obviously lots of fun and lots of potential there to create an individual bass line. And again, I've now got a loop that sounds completely different to before, and you can go in here now and I could fine tune things so they work for this loop if I wish, you know, because obviously I've just swapped out the bass loop for a different one. So I could come in here and, you know, shuffle this around and change it up to suit the particular loop that I'm going to roll with. But hopefully you agree that's a great way to get some inspiration going to then start sort of developing a track idea. So what I'm going to show you just as the last thing a little bit further, I could now duplicate, come up the top here to this audio track, Command D to duplicate a whole version of it, and come over to the second one, which now has everything copied over, all my automation loop, window, clip view, and all this information over here on the left as well. And I can now sort of say, okay, well, I like my bass line. In this window, I'm going to go and choose something else. So let's say a chord loop, for example, from the same sample pack. Okay, so maybe this chord loop here, and I can drag that again down into here. Push play. I'm already a pretty big fan of that. I could again experiment around in here. So in my opinion, tons of possibilities there, and I'm using another completely different audio loop from a completely different part of the pack, and there's nothing to stop me from grabbing a drum loop and dropping it in here and seeing what happens with this automation on a drum loop. So that's going to be it for today's Ableton Live creative technique and way to spark your creativity. Grab some audio loops, drop them into your project, get in there and do some pitch modulation like this, or pitch automation by choosing the clip and the transposition from the envelopes. Have a lot of fun with it, and then, as I said, you can then just actually just keep swapping out the sample, choosing other samples, loops, and dragging them and retaining the same automation. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you found it really informative. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Obviously consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with the rest of this series, and obviously more tips and tricks and videos all about Ableton Live, and smash the bell so you get a notification to tell you when the next video is up and live on my profile. So thanks a lot, boys and girls. Any comments, any feedback, any thoughts, please drop them in the comments below, and I'll catch you soon. Take care, everybody. Ciao for now. Bye.